Greetings, people of Earth. Welcome back. My name is Jax, and today we are discussing Chapter 8 of the Dao De Ching, Avoiding Conflict. Very few verses in this whole book resonate me singularly like this one does. This one, and particularly this translation, which is my favorite of this particular one that I've heard, I really enjoy this. If you don't know, I don't like conflict. I don't like it at all. If I can avoid a debate, if I can avoid any kind of hostility or negativity, I do that, especially in person. Online, I have got that like anonymity, or, I'm a million miles away from people, and so I can kind of say what I want. In person, not my vibe. I very much avoid, I very much, never explain, never complain. So this whole verse really speaks to me, and few verses in the Dao De Ching really act as a way of living. Very few of them can act as like a standalone code of how to live your life. But if there was going to be a single verse that, you could like tattoo on your back or something, this wouldn't be a bad choice in my humble opinion. But I'm not going to fight you on it. So I'm going to read the verse and then we're going to talk about it, because there's a lot to talk about in this one. We're getting into some of the verses where they're getting longer and more interesting. And one thing I want to note before we dive into the verse, notice how throughout Taoism there is the sort of comparison with water, flowing, liquid, going with the flow. Notice those imagery and those sort of symbolism, because they are very important and interesting. Avoiding conflict. People of the highest virtue are like water. Water benefits creation without any conflict, and it favors the low places, shunned by the common people. In this it resembles the Tao. Live in harmony with the land. Allow emotions to run deep. Show benevolence in your dealings with others. Speak with honesty. Arrange things according to the proper order. Manage according to your ability. Act according to opportunity. Without conflict, there is no animosity. So, again, a lot to unpack. I love reading that verse. That is just, it's so good. So, first of all, people of the highest virtue are like water. Water flows. Water doesn't, in many ways, water doesn't conflict. It chooses the path of least resistance. It chooses the direction that is going to move it forward. It doesn't want to stagnate. It doesn't want to remain motionless. And so people of the highest virtue don't actively seek conflict. There's a verse in the future that talks about a true wise warrior walks into a battlefield as if he is mourning in a cemetery. He's regretting having to fight, but he's going. And that's kind of the attitude. The people with the highest virtue are the people who don't sweat the small stuff, don't let little things impede their movement, and they're flexible. There's going to be more imagery in the future about blades of grass dancing in the wind, and how that is much more agreeable than being a very rigid old oak tree that's going to fall over in the next storm. And I've said that before. So I really like this. Sorry, I bumped you. I really like this imagery. I like the idea of being water. Sometimes you often hear this verse translated, and it talks about the ocean, and how no matter how high the mountains and those things are, all the water returns to the sea. It returns to the ocean. And because it is lowest, it is highest of virtue. And so that kind of concept is a really beautiful piece of imagery, but it also is pertinent to how we live our lives, and how we cannot let ourselves have these lofty expectations, these high virtues, because you're going to be let down, you're going to be upset, you're going to be corrected and proven wrong. And so by being flexible and just keep swimming, just keep moving, you allow yourself not to get weighed down by these things. You allow yourself a lot of freedom. And like I said in the last video, the idea that the universe is the only eternal thing, and even that might not be eternal. We are just travelers. We aren't here for a long time. You cannot take anything with you. All you can do is experience as much of this earth as possible, as much of this amazing, fantastical life of suffering and joy and beauty, much as you can, and then you return, you go back to wherever we came from. And I find this a very comforting thing, as you all know. So be like water. So now, water benefits creation without any conflict. Water is a really good point of symbolism and imagery because water sustains all of us. We are all water life forms. I know we're carbon based, but we all require water. We're all made up of a huge amount of water. The earth is a vast majority of its surface is water. And it is sort of what we've decided as the building block of life. Scientists, when they look onto different planets or distant universes, they're looking for places that could have liquid water because of its ability. And it's kind of amazing symbolism if you think of it, because even the evolutionary biologists think that we derive from some water-based life form, some life form that originated in the ocean. And you see those clips of like the little lizardy thing coming out of the water and learning how to walk and everything. We came from the water. And so the idea that we are this fluid, flowing essence is really beautiful. And if you can commit that to your mindset, that has a lot of power in it. I think, we don't talk a lot about seeing yourself as your best possible self, and this whole idea of like how you view yourself shapes who you are. If you can see yourself as water, as liquid, as movement, as the ability to flow, and the path of least resistance is what you're aiming for, I think that could be a very powerful imagery, a very powerful image to use in your daily life. And it certainly helps with my stress reduction. So it favors the low places shunned by the common people. It is so easy to try and regard what other people look at as valuable. I love this tangent where a few hundred years ago, eating a lobster was seen as low class. These bottom feeders, these disgusting animals. Oh my gosh, how could you ever eat that? That's for fishermen. That's not for the bourgeoisie or the aristocrats. Today, eating lobster is considered one of the greatest delicacies. You are refined, you are wealthy, you are powerful. The idea that somehow being rich and powerful gives you virtue or gives you some step over everyone else is ridiculous. These kinds of practices, half of the practices that the bourgeois, the aristocrats, the noblemen, half of those things that they do, poor people did them first. And then rich people caught on and said, oh man, these poor people, they know what they're doing. We got to jump on this. And so the idea that, oh yeah, you have to follow what the wealthy people are doing. No. You want to shun those things. You want to stick to the low places, the honest things. I also bring out this tangent where in Shakespeare's era, many of the plates in London were made with lead paint and lead lining on them, which really affected the health of the aristocracy. And even the makeup that like Queen Elizabeth I was wearing, it had lead in it, and which slowly like really affected her health. Whereas the common peasant people, on the whole, were eating healthy vegetables out of wooden plates and bowls, and generally life expectancy was a lot better, especially if you were an aristocrat who was mucking about with all this lead and chemicals and things like that. And so people who actively can avoid those like high places or those, I don't know, there's like a social stratification in class. If you can avoid all of that and just, enjoy the honest, humble things of life, you will live a much longer and a much more enjoyable life. And so that's what I think of whenever I listen to this. Like, it favors the low places, shunned by the common people. Because everybody wants to look rich and famous and powerful, but nobody understands that, those people aren't happy either. Those people are all chasing something and, trying to fight the path of least resistance. They're trying to actively fight all of the universe, and they're going to lose. They just don't know it yet. Living in harmony with the land. I mean, that's just a great line. I mean, that is so universally pertinent, no matter what decade or century you're in. Living in harmony with the things around you, living close to the earth. I think that's beautiful. No matter how you visualize it, using different imagery, trying to imagine it in different situations, taking it literally, that's just a good piece of advice all around. Allow emotions to run deep. I like to think of this as allow yourself to feel your emotions. Your emotions, as much as we like to say in the West that your emotions are, just these emotional spurts of energy, they don't mean anything. Don't let them run you. Feel them. They're there for a reason. If you're hurt, ask yourself why you feel hurt. If you feel happy, ask yourself why you feel happy. Let your emotions run through you, run deep. Don't bottle them up. Don't try and change them. Analyze them and just let them feel. Let them be. They're happening for a reason. If you're feeling intense jealousy, ask yourself why. And how incredible is it that you can feel that you can feel upset that somebody has something you don't. And I think that's what I think when I think of that. Show benevolence in your dealings with others. Compassion. Be compassionate to everybody. Again, we're only here for a short amount of time. Just be compassionate. Understand that everybody's got a journey. And even if somebody never decides to look at any of this or, introspectively analyze their lives, love them. They're not going to be here for long. And one day you might look back and say, man, I wish I had a cup of coffee with them one more time, or wish I could see them again. Because one day we all return. Speak with honesty. Again, this is a great thing, especially about avoiding conflict. If you don't lie, you tend not to get into these conflicts. Conflicts are kind of caused by misunderstandings, admitting, oh, I know this. Yeah, I know this. When you don't, it's okay to say, oh, sorry, I don't know this. And it's okay to apologize. It's also okay not to apologize. But just be honest. Arrange things according to the proper order. Manage according to your ability. Act according to opportunity. Without conflict, there is no animosity. So this brings up a big philosophical debate in the world where you have some people who say, sometimes it is necessary to fight. And then you have other people who say, nope, it's never necessary. You could always, leave the situation. You could always, turn the other cheek, show compassion. And I don't have an answer for this. Neither does this, if you notice. It says, without conflict, there is no animosity. Conflict exists, unfortunately. But the whole point of this verse is talking about avoiding it and how you can rise above it or move around it is more apt. You can flow around conflict because people will bring conflict into situations no matter what. But just as the universe is impossible to control or manipulate, you can control how you react to it. So you can control how you react to conflict. Avoiding conflict doesn't imply that no conflict exists. It just implies that you need to avoid it. And there are ways, these are some of the steps, on how an individual can move past conflict without letting it drag them down, without encouraging them to pick up a weapon and begin fighting in the conflict as well. And like I said before, Taoism doesn't advocate for passivity or doing absolutely nothing ever. It advocates for being mindful with your actions, allowing the natural course of things to happen, and trying to give you the tools that best position you to live a good life, because it's going to be a short one. No matter if you're here for 5 months or you're here for 107 years. Life is short. So that's basically the idea, is if you can remember that flexibility, that path of least resistance, it's almost always better. I have never been in a conflict where I thought, yeah, I'm glad I fought. I'm glad, like, what did my fighting get me? Did I convince the other side they were wrong? Did I, stand up for some great injustice in my life? Not really. No. Generally, you encounter people who are just confrontational people because of how they've lived and how they've grown up. And there really is no solution. You're not going to change people. People change on their own. They don't change because you spouted 2,500-year-old Chinese wisdom at them. They don't do that. I'm sorry. If you try and spout stuff in the Dao De Ching at other people, you might just get punched. And that's not nice. That's not kind. But it does illustrate this rather well. When it comes to avoiding conflict, path of least resistance, if you encounter a situation where you just don't see any winning, cut your losses. Avoid it. Move. Change. Alter course. There's really no shame in that. The idea of shame is an entirely fabricated construction. So, you will only feel shame if you allow yourself to feel shame. What is shame in general? I have no problem in avoiding conflict. I have no problem in just being quiet and moving on when I hear some stupid things going on in a room beside me. It's not always your job to fight the good fight. And it's controversial to say in this day and age, but it's true. You don't have to. Other people will fight that fight just fine. So, thank you guys for watching. That's a perfect time to end. And as always, I will talk to you guys tomorrow.